The title from Emmett Fox is Watch and Work. To train yourself in the habit of thought selection will be difficult for the first few days, but it is the most interesting experiment that you could possibly make. You will be amazed at the things that you will learn about yourself. This week may be the most significant week in your whole life. Not only will you be able to face your present difficulties in a better spirit, but the difficulties will go. You cannot change conditions directly. You have often tried to do so and failed. But go on the 7-day mental diet and conditions must change for you. This then is your prescription. For 7 days you must not allow yourself to dwell for a moment on any kind of negative thought. You must watch yourself for a week and must not under any pretense allow your mind to dwell on any thought that is not positive, constructive, optimistic, kind. This discipline will be so strenuous that you could not maintain it consciously for much more than a week, but a week will be enough, because by that time the habit of positive thinking will begin to be established. Some changes for the better will have come into your life, encouraging you enormously, and then the new way of life will be so attractive that you will find your mentality aligning itself almost automatically. Watch and pray that ye enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak. And the scripture I just read, I'll repeat it, is from Matthew's Gospel, chapter 26, verse 41. Watch and pray that you enter not into temptation. The spirit indeed is willing, but the flesh is weak.
Thank you. So the title today is of Lilies and Sparrows. And Callie and Joe, if you'll get your email to me one way or another, I can get you on the email list so you know what the talk is about midweek before. So this comes from a book I came across about, what was the title? Of the Little Sparrows, I recall. And it was a series of sermons by a fellow named Quillian. Don't know anything about him. But there was one that really did sort of a mind shift on me. And I'm going to share some of what he said and where it's led me. Particularly in trying times like this, it's so easy to become discouraged about our life, about our spiritual walk, about whatever difficulties or things that are not measuring up in our lives. With all the chaotic energy, all the anxiety, all the uncertainty, that which we're going through just seems to be multiplied in terms of feeling low, feeling hopeless, and so forth. And even though there are passages in the Bible that say otherwise, we could be praying, don't see an answer, praying for ourselves, praying for our situation, praying for others, or we don't see an answer we like. We just keep plugging along, trying to get through each day, trying to make things better or do things better or get past whatever challenges we're facing. And often all we're seeing is small results. Now, Emmett Fox just gave you a prescription for changing your mentality, and I did not read that before I wrote this sermon. So this is one of those cases where there's divine synchronicity. So first of all, let me read a couple of passages from the Christian Bible that fit with what we're talking about here. From Matthew 10. And Matthew, as I recall, was written specifically addressing the poorest of the poor, the hopeless. And that's, frankly, whom Jesus was serving too, though most people don't acknowledge that, and particularly most churches don't acknowledge that. But Matthew 10, are not 2 sparrows sold for a penny? Yet not one of them will fall on the ground without your Father's will. But so far as you are concerned, even the hairs of your head are all numbered by God. Therefore fear not, you are much more important than many sparrows. Well, I should hope so, but if I'm more important than many sparrows, it'd be nice if I could fly. Then observe, and these are Lamsa translations, so they're slightly different from what most people are used to. Observe the wild flowers. Now, in other translations, they say lilies, but Lamsa says, observe the wild flowers, how they grow. They do not get tired out, nor do they spin. But I say to you that not even Solomon, with all of his glory, was covered like any of them. Now, if God clothes in such fashion the grass of the field, which today is and tomorrow falls into the fireplace, is he not much more to you? So, I've always taken these words as a sort of commitment that God is generally engaged with us. But Quillian goes a couple of steps farther. And the correct title, I've got it here, I'd forgotten it. Not a Sparrow Falls. He writes, we just persist in believing God loves us in general, but he can't love us in particular. That God has a purpose for the world in general, but he doesn't have any purpose for the world in particular. And he notes that God's greatest power is never used in general. Now, this is part of what had me sit up and think. God's creative power is always in particular. He never does just say, well, I believe now we will have another generation, and then creates another generation of people. He doesn't do that. He creates another generation in particular. 2 people fall in love, and in the union of their beautiful love, something more beautiful happens. A life is created in particular. The next generation is not created in general, it is created one by one. God never says, let's have a snowstorm in general. Oh no. Pick up a tiny snowflake, just one of the billions, and probably in school you've already experienced this. You put it on a cold microscope so it doesn't melt, and it is an absolutely beautiful piece of perfection. And it is, in theory, the only one of its kind. Actually, a mathematician told me, no, they do repeat, but they repeat one out of such huge quantities that the likelihood of our seeing 2 that are identical is virtually impossible. So, as we acknowledge here, we're all made of God's stuff. And thus, if we're extending what he said, that every atom of this God stuff, whether it's Phyllis, whether it's me, whether it's the video, the computer you're looking on through, whether it's the trees, whether it's the pieces of the universe so far out that we'll never get there, since the entire universe is divine God stuff, then every piece of it has been created in particular. And I will say to you that each of us has been gifted in particular with divine love, divine guidance, divine care, divine oversight. And where is that divine energy directing us as individuals toward? Well, the divine created each of us to develop our highest capacity within the context of what situations, skills, physical attributes, and various intelligences we were gifted with when we entered this world. And intelligences, for those who may not be aware, they now say there are multiple intelligences. You can be emotionally intelligent. That's where Phyllis had to train me. Intellectually intelligent, mechanically intelligent, and I'm sure there are a bunch more that I just don't know about. But our job is to take the gifts we have been given and develop ourselves to the fullest. Now, that said, irrespective of what the divine, what God would have us to do with what we've been gifted. We have given free will the total capacity to obstruct, to block, to refuse to explore paths, to refuse to explore opportunities which God has laid out for us. We can be our own worst enemies in that regard. So how does the divine experience us when we fall short? If you will, when we sin, remembering that the Aramaic definition of to sin is to miss the mark. Well, I've always accepted that if we miss the mark, God is disappointed that we've fallen short. Now, it is also, by me, axiomatic that, yeah, we fall short, but we're always welcome to come back. Contrary to so many places that preach you're a sinner going to hell, thank God. But I've never given much more thought to it than about how God cares about the well-being of a sparrow or a wildflower or the hairs on my head. And this is where Quillian started really catching my interest. He says, the reason that you and I have difficulty remembering 25 people, or if we take a Dale Carnegie course, maybe we can remember 200 and feel proud of ourselves. But to have personal knowledge of every person, every animal, even just in our neighborhood, is to us an impossibility. And it's difficult for us to conceptualize a divine existence who can manage it for an entire universe or multiple universes and frequencies. We don't know how far things go. And Quillian explains, all we've done is simply attribute to God our limitations as humans, but he doesn't have them. God is in us, we are in God. Remember panentheism? We are in God, God is in us, we are God. We are all God stuff. In him we live and move and have our breathing, being, and everything that happens to us happens to the divine. God is intimately aware of our every heartache, our every joy, our every problem, our every success. Again, we are in God. God is in us. We are of God. So that reminder brought me up short. Not only does God know and feel about the sparrow and what the sparrow is feeling, excuse me, but the sparrow is made of the same God stuff that you and I are, but extended further because everything that exists is God stuff. So God knows and feels every atom, every subatomic particle, every molecule of all that exists. So I found myself extrapolating. Our human body can contain something like a septillion molecules. That's 10 to the 7th power, I think. So in my body, if I were to step on a thumbtack or my bare leg was going to brush up against a stinging nettle, my body would immediately know that something was wrong, something had gone wrong. And in your own experience, pinprick, sting, a burn, it affects the functioning of your entire being, your entire body. Now, if a pinprick can do that for me and I am aware of it, and it's a molecule that's been disrupted, or maybe a couple of molecules, or 3, depending on what happens, then I, in a sense, am like a molecule or atom in the divine structure, so that anything I do which falls short of my best, anything that happens to me that causes me to grieve, to sorrow, or to joy, can be likened to a pinprick in the divine structure. And this is what really struck home to me, that I'm part of something beyond my own comprehension, just as the molecule that just got a pinprick. If it has any wit about it, its existence in me is beyond its comprehension. So, given that particular relationship that the divine has with me, has with the sparrow, has with Phyllis, has with each one of you, has with the pets, with the horses, with the cats, that sensitivity, that awareness of our tumultuousness, of our sadnesses, of our joys. But if we're that level of connected with the divine, doesn't it bring to us something of a requirement in terms of choosing our own behavior, our own life choices? If I should avoid pinpricking myself as a part of loving self-care, should I not also avoid creating pinpricks within divine existence, whether pinpricks of myself, pinpricks of other pieces of God stuff, the God stuff of which I am just a small molecule? Whether this is in interacting with those around me, even a tree, some Native American tribes, anything that they ate, or the fish that they caught and then put in the ground before they planted the corn seed, they gave thanks to its service. They were acknowledging that we were all part of this God stuff. And as a correlation to that, should I not respond proactively and positively and protectively when I see other parts of this divine God stuff put at risk of harm? Certainly I should not cause harm to another being, and that is a core belief of Quakerism. And I believe, as the apostles understood it, a core belief of Jesus the Christ. But we should also look at it this way. It's a good thing to apply antiseptic and a Band-Aid where there is a prick or cut in the divine being, but it's even better to remove the pin or the cutting edge to a place where it can do no harm. Certainly, right now in the world as a whole and in this country in specific, there are so many cutting edges happening, causing damage. And should not we, as part of the great divine, be responding to those who are hurt, be seeking to find ways to remove the cutting edges, the pins, the causes of damage? And I've had folks I've talked with who felt absolutely hopeless. The world is so big and I'm so small. What can I do? Well, remember I mentioned that we've each been given gifts, and Paul refers to that each of us has gifts that we're to use. Well, just looking at our own community as I was thinking about this, these are some examples that come to mind. Lori R., who is here today. Yes, Lori R. is here. She uses healing energy to help those who are injured physically heal. And I believe she does the same with emotional. Lori K. uses words, presentation, and physical demonstrating to protect others. Karen A helps some of God's plants to thrive. And those of you who happen to have not been here when she shared it, her property is just filled with very happy plants. It's a gorgeous place. And it brings joy to the plants and to the universe. Mary and Phyllis serve as liaisons for people who are in medical crisis. They go with them to the hospital. Susie, Mary, Phyllis, and I, and I think there are probably more, care for at-risk animals. Leah gives upbeat energy to so many people that she encounters. She makes people happier just by her personality. And Ellie shares knowledge that is not commonly known, and spiritual wisdom to people in a place where there isn't other availability. So, thinking of what Fox said in terms of doing a positive diet, think in terms of what gifts you have and how you can put your gifts to work to make the whole of this God stuff, the whole of existence, a healthier, better, happier place where every piece of our God stuff can thrive. That's what I have to say, folks. Anything anyone wants to contribute? Lori R.
Twice tonight while you were talking about we are, God is in us, we are of God. And I wrote down, we can do all things. And Spirit spoke to me immediately, stop limiting yourself, which that was a message for me, but there might be somebody else that falls into that same category. I think too many times we limit ourselves because we don't have the genuine faith to believe that things can happen that mentally most people can't even begin to comprehend. And then you said, after I put stop limiting yourself, I said, you then limit God in you. And that hurt my heart because I don't ever want to find myself in a place where God has a purpose for me, but I can't get out of my own way to get to that purpose. And I found myself there, and let's hope that I don't find myself there anytime soon again.
And thank you for illuminating that point. As Quillian says, we limit God by our own concepts of what is possible, but it also works the other way. We limit what God allows us to do by our own concepts, and somehow we need to connect internally with the limitlessness within our own constructs of this divine spirit, of all that is divine God stuff. Thank you. Somebody else with a contribution. Ellie, and then Christy.
It's interesting, this talk on this day, that the way timing works. I mean, I keep saying I'm grateful for timing, and it just blows my mind the way timing works. Anyway, today is the 9th day of Yule. And today the sun is felt no longer symbolic. The light has been reborn and returning. And this night honors the moment when hope becomes certainty. Think about that. When hope becomes certainty, it's no longer a thought, it's certain. And, tonight focuses on ancestral blessings and oaths. And it's believed what's spoken was tied to binding fate. When you were talking about structure, That's what came to mind. And, and then it's a night of listening versus asking. When you were talking about comprehension, listening, usually most nights there's an ask on each night, but tonight focuses on, listening versus asking. And then one of the things to do, burn what no longer serves you and to seal transformation when you were talking about choosing life choices. So burning those things that no longer serve us. And you were talking about, the Native American and, and how they honor, well, ways that, people do that with the land, relating to the land, especially those that use the land for farming, the fertility of the land and people, blessing for the livestock and harvest, and ensuring abundance through the dark months. And what Lori R. said, I'm always reading something. And, what Lori R. said kind of reminded me of something I read in a book. The author, Matt Arwin, anyway, he's talking about combining, psychic power and witchcraft. And he's talking how psychic and witch are heavily charged words. And he knows of people that are psychics or witches who try to dodge the words together because of how the words are very charged. And they'll use words more comfortable or accepted by the outsiders, words such as initiative, empath, pagan, or energy worker. However, one of the problems that I often find is that through the toning down of these labels and attempts to make them more palatable to the general public, there's often a lessening of the full potential of the psychic and magical ability as well. When Lori R. was talking about, how we limit ourselves or how we limit the divine, that kind of triggered that, how the different words we use to lessen what we can do. And a lot of times, we do label ourselves, I can only do this, or I think I can do that. We question, our intuition. I don't know if I can do that, and it's not like a question of that we can do it. Sometimes we don't even think we can, but yet we have that divine in us to know that we can do it. So when we question our ability to do something, we're questioning the divine's ability that she put in us to be able to do those things. And, as Lori R. says, I find myself there sometimes, and I don't want to put myself there to limit myself or the divine, who's given me those gifts. So thank you, Brian.
Thank you. Christy.
Hey, I kind of caught you in the middle because everything's going on in the background in my house here, but I appreciate, thank you, Ellie, also by giving the synopsis. I am looking at something because it just popped into my head, and one was Joseph Campbell and the other was Einstein, which are two pretty important people in my life as far as how they lived their lives and where they took us. With Einstein, he is more of a Spinoza man in that he identifies, I'm trying to get my words here because I'm also not real tuned in with my brain. He wasn't an agnostic, but he did appreciate that there's a cosmic religion of science and that there is something more than a personal God. And I love that. We've talked about Spinoza before, and which would be a nice talk to maybe spend another time again. With Joseph Campbell, probably the one thing, I was looking for another word that he used through his, what was that series called? I had it and it's gone now. What was the name of his series? Absolutely stunning. And I even have it on disc. His quote was to, where is it? I realize I'm not as tuned in with my brain, sorry. Joseph Campbell, the saying was, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss and doors will open, which is remarkable at the time that I listened to it, giving me permission to be in my fantasy of my art, or whatever you want to call it, wherever my mysticism may take me. Follow your bliss. And I thought that's really incredible permission, based on having been raised Catholic and been sitting in church and waiting for the cross to at least jiggle a little bit after all of those hours on my knees, and realizing that's not going to happen. So whatever I was looking for, follow your bliss. So that's my thing today.
Thank you. We thank you, God, for having brought us together. We thank you for watching over us as we depart from here. Help us to be tender and sensitive to your guidance, your leading. Help us to see the paths you'd care to have us walk. Give us the courage to walk even if we're uncertain. Help us to love, to forgive, to grow in you, and be ever better exemplars for the kind of life that this world should be living. We thank you for all the good you've given us. We give you all credit for the good in our lives. And we thank you for guiding us back here again sometime soon. We say this and claim this in the name of the great divine. And we all say, Amen.
Amen.